Today I'm going to talk about lunar returns. So we have a solar return, and that is the return of the sun each year to the exact degree and minute of our birth sun. And the moment that the sun returns to that degree and minute, a chart is formed at that moment from the pattern in the sky at that time. But each month of the year, we have what is called a lunar return. So we can chart our emotional trajectory throughout the year. So the sun and the lunar return is your year general theme. The lunar returns change month to month. So the moon represents our emotions, the ebb and tide and flow of our emotional nature, our moods, our well-being, our feelings. So a lunar return occurs every 27 to approximately 28 days, and that is when the moon, by transit, returns to the exact degree and minute of our birth moon. And it creates its own chart at that moment that is good for that month. So now, what to look for? So it's our emotional focus month to month, okay? The house position of the moon is most important. It will be in one of the 12 houses. This is the area of our life where we're most emotionally invested in for that month. Also, aspects made to that moon further elaborate the lunar return themes for that particular month. Now, what to look for is the moon angular? In other words, does it conjunct the first house cusp, which is identity, physical body, expressing yourself, very openly, emotionally. Fourth house cusp is your private life, your home life, your family life, your innermost life, okay? Your ancestry. Seventh house cusp, relationships, not just marriage or partners, but business relationships, work relationships. Also, the seventh house in traditional astrology is the house of open enemies. Sometimes it's court cases and dealing with lawyers and things of that nature, and contractual relationships. The 10th house, our public status, our public standing, our career, and how we're viewed by the public. So if the moon, which is our emotions, is on the 10th house, our emotions are going to be pretty much publicly displayed in some manner. So having a lunar return moon being angular is very important. Now, the house position I mentioned, it's going to fall in one of the 12 houses. And again, that area of life is we're very invested in. And, the first house is, as I said, is identity. It's the physical body. It's our public persona. The second house is our values, our self-worth, our financial resources. Okay, how we earn our income. The third house is all matters related to communication, brothers and sisters, short trips back and forth, writings, the written and spoken word, okay? Learning, everyday learning, studying something. The fourth house is your home life, your private life, the roots, your family. Fifth house is children, your love life, your creativity, your creative self-expression. The fifth house is about maybe socializing more and having fun, okay? It could also be about taking risks. The sixth house is our day-to-day health routines, working routines, how we approach our daily schedule. The sixth house can also be labeled the house of stress, because usually when a planet is in the sixth house, it can be involved with our health. And if we're under a lot of stress for any reason whatsoever, we're going to be asked to attend to that. And because the moon can be very emotional, this can be interfering with our well-being on some level. Now, the seventh house, again, is partnerships of all kinds, significant one-to-one partnerships. The eighth house is not only legacies, trusts, taxes, insurance, shared resources. It's very deep intimacy. It is life and death experiences. I consider it also the house of trauma, as well as the house of deep psychology and metaphysical interests and occult interests. The ninth house is higher education, foreign travel, teaching, studying something that broadens your horizons. It's also our belief systems. It's also religion. It's the law. 10th house, as I mentioned before, it's our public standing. It's our career. It's our life direction. It's how we're seen in the world. It's the legacy we are leaving the world later in life. The 11th house is all about friendships, socializing, group involvement with lots of people. Sometimes if the moon is there, we're dealing emotionally with a lot of different people or groups that month. Or we may be emotionally invested in socializing more on a more mundane level. 12th house is a very deep house, very interesting. The moon here can represent we're more emotionally isolated that month. We're going inwards. Introspection is a key word. We need time to retreat, to recharge our batteries. The 12th house is also the house of places that are hidden, places of retreat, places of, like hospitals, okay? Healing centers, hospitals, behind the scenes types of places. This could be this could be a month where someone's working solo from their house and they don't have a lot of contact with the outside world, potentially. It also could be a month we're attending to our spirituality or to meditation or to things that calm our nervous system, to deal with loss and struggle and stress, because that can also be represented by the 12th house. So that's the general themes of the 12 houses. So we look at where is the moon that month? What aspects does it make? Is it angular? Very important. Now, it's not just the moon. Is the sun angular in the lunar return? So think about what I said about the moon being angular. With the sun being angular, that's the highlighter, that house is also very important. And we're seeing more publicly that particular month. Unless it's, on the IC, which is the 4th house cusp, which is our private life. Now, if the sun and moon are making an aspect, they don't always make an aspect in a lunar return that's, up front and center. But if they're making like a conjunction, a new moon or a full moon, for example, or a first quarter square or a waning square, that is significant. And so we want to look at that because we want to see, now is the moon trining the sun? That's a harmonious flowing aspect. So we want to, look at that to understand flowing energies or more challenging energies that month. I also we have what's called the perfected ruler in our birthday solar return chart. For example, this year I have Mars as my Lord of the Year. So when I run my lunar return for the month, I want to look at where Mars is. Is it angular? What house is it in? Is it making really strong aspects? And that tells me that could be a particularly eventful month or busy month. Also, are any other planetary returns happening during a lunar return? Not the solar return, such as Mercury return, Venus return, or Mars return. Okay? That is important, and that would be looked at as a significant month. So I also will overlay the lunar return with the natal birth chart to see if there are natal planets conjoin the solar return planets or vice versa. And that tells me, that elaborates further the emotional landscape of that month. For example, well, I'm going to save that for later, because if you're having a Moon-Uranus conjunction, usually Uranus moves so slowly, it's going to be conjunct your Moon that whole year almost. However, what house is it in? That makes a difference. So if someone has Pluto conjunct their Moon for an entire year by transit, in the natal chart, it might be in their 3rd house, but in the solar return chart, it might be in their 8th house. So you want to, look at that theme and add it to the dimensions of the solar return and the transits. Now, a lunar return, if someone runs their lunar returns for the whole year, if they expect that this is going to be a significant year and they have a question whether a particular event or circumstance is going to come to fruition, running their lunar returns for the year can pinpoint, depending on what they're asking, a significant turning point for them, because of all the reasons I stated, what we look for, planets on angles and so forth. So that is important to know. So we have, 13 to 14 lunar returns every year. And it's our focus month to month. And it really adds a nice dimension, a further dimension to understanding what's going on with us throughout the year. So I printed out a few examples of lunar returns. And the first one I'm using is a really, really important one. This return, no, I don't want to use that one. Sorry about that. January of 2005 is when I went downhill physically with serious illness symptoms. I had not been yet diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, but I knew I had it because I did all the research, and it took time to get treatment. But if you look at my lunar return, you will see a lot of angular planets. I had Mars and Pluto conjunct the midheaven. That is my standing. That is my public status. Mars is muscles, and Pluto is intense initiation. I have Saturn retrograde in Cancer in the 6th house, ruling my ascendant in my lunar return. That is health issues. Saturn is not exactly very happy in the sign of Cancer. I have Aquarius rising in my lunar return, and I have Neptune conjoin my ascendant. In other words, confusion, misunderstandings. Doctors don't know what's wrong with me. Neptune is in the 12th house, conjoining my 1st house cusp. Okay? The Neptune is squaring the dwarf planet Ceres, which is right on my, it's in my 8th house, basically. And Ceres is about grief. Okay, I didn't know what was happening to me. I was doing everything right to take care of myself, but nothing was helping. I have an exact sun, which is my self-expression, my energy, conjoin Chiron, the asteroid of the wounded healer, exact. And it's opposing, it's in the 12th. The 12th house can be significant retreat, hospitals, behind the scenes, going to medical appointments and so forth. And it's opposing challenge aspect to Saturn in the 6th house. The moon, which rules my sixth house of health, day-to-day health and my health routines, is in the second house, surprisingly, which is my self-worth, which is my resources, okay? Conjoin the North Node, which is important meetings with other people. My self-worth, or, my values were deeply affected that month because I didn't know what was happening to me, and it was very scary. And I saw several medical professionals in that lunar return month. I also have the planet Uranus rising in the first house in my lunar return chart, and it squares almost, within a few degrees, the midheaven. So that's an angular aspect. So Uranus, which rules my ascendant, first house is also the physical body, my public persona, square my lunar return midheaven. Sudden change in my health, unexpected developments. And that's just one example, okay? Now, I have another example. I have a client who, she had her second child in February of 2001. Everything was going fine with the pregnancy. However, when it came time for the birth, during that lunar month, her son was born blue, okay? And it was very terrifying for she and her husband. The baby had to stay in the hospital for a little while because they had to make sure that there was no brain damage and that, everything was going to be okay. Now, in her lunar return month, she does have Jupiter conjunct the lunar return midheaven, and Jupiter rules the fourth house of family. Now, that by itself is very positive. That's like becoming a parent and optimism. However, you have to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that she has moon in Cancer. Her natal moon is at 14 Cancer. Conjoin the North Node with less than 1 degree in the 11th house of important meetings with a lot of people. This is doctors and this is nurses, okay? She has Mercury, ruler of her Virgo ascendant in the lunar return chart, in the sixth house, retrograde. It's 0 Pisces. This is a confusing placement. She's confused. And also in the sixth house, Sun conjunct Uranus. Very unexpected developments, very jarring developments in the sixth house of health, daily routines, and stress. The ruler of her fifth house of children is Saturn. And Saturn is conjoined the midheaven from the ninth house. So what's up front and center is, oh no, this is a difficult time because the birth didn't go as well as planned, and there are things going on here, that aren't good. Let's see, what else? So yes, the ruler of her 12th house, which is hospitals, is the Sun, which is in the 6th house conjoined Uranus, ruler of the 6th house, which is stress. She was very stressed out and worried about this. It all turned out well. And also, I think I forgot to mention Pluto, the planet of initiation and transformation and, difficult circumstances often, is in the 4th house of home and family, making what we call an exact inconjunct to her moon. That is an aspect, 150-degree aspect of stress, adjustment, and sometimes separation. It's a deeply psychological aspect. It's usually very stressful when we're working with two totally different energies, and we somehow have to figure out how to work through some conflict or psychological issue. In this case, it's the stress of what's happening with the baby. So that is a big deal because Pluto is, even though it's in a wide conjunction to the 4th house cusp, so I would consider it angular, okay? And it rules her 3rd house, which is her mind and what she's thinking about. So there's another interesting example. And luckily that all turned out very well. I also looked at the return for another client who was let go from her job in 2023. Very unexpected. The organization was taken over by a new CEO, and she was doing very well in her profession. She was well regarded, and so were many other people that were let go. Apparently, one day she went to work and was told that she no longer had a job. So where was the moon? So the first thing we look at is the moon in Cancer. Her birth moon in Cancer was in the 11th house, okay? And it rules her 11th house in the lunar return. Now, she had to deal with a lot of different people. She had a lot of questions. She consulted with a lot of people. She was very emotional. The moon was in an opposition, a challenge aspect to Mercury, ruler of her lunar return midheaven, okay? So Mercury was conjunct Pluto. So she's really thinking deeply. She's thinking seriously. This was a depressing situation, very unexpected. Her lunar return midheaven is in Gemini, ruled by Mercury. She has Mars in her lunar return in the 10th house, okay? And she's taking action. She needs to take action. It's squaring Venus in her lunar return chart, the ruler of her second house of finances. In the 9th house, which is also law, she had to talk to a lawyer about this situation. Her belief systems. She also had, the node conjoined Uranus, which was active at that time, but it's in her 9th house and it's squaring her sun in the 6th in the lunar return chart. So sun square Uranus is an unexpected, sudden change, okay? The sun is in the 6th, rules the 12th of, loss is one of the meanings. And Uranus rules her 6th house of her day-to-day work routines and health routines. Now, Neptune, the planet of disillusionment, inspiration, confusion. Remember, these planets have a spectrum from the lower end to the higher end. So Neptune was at 23 Pisces at this time. It was conjoined the 7th house cusp. Very confusion about a contractual relationship at work, okay? Disillusioned, this is an ego wipeout aspect in many cases, okay? And you also have to look at how Neptune is aspected. It is squaring her midheaven, okay? So not only is, Sun squaring Uranus, Neptune is squaring her midheaven, which is her career angle. Like, why is this happening? What am I going to do? Total confusion here. So again, things eventually worked out. She found a great job and so forth. But, you can really see this was going to be an impactful month for her. Of course, it's even easier in retrospect to go back and look. But certainly there are aspects here that are very important, such as Neptune being angular and the Sun-Uranus square and Mercury conjunct Pluto, a lot of things. So these are just a few examples of lunar returns. Again, remember, they change from month to month. So the emotional landscape and the ebb and flow and the tide of our emotions, we can chart throughout the year. Not just from one chart, the birthday chart, the solar return chart. We can chart throughout the year where we're emotionally invested. So if you're interested in learning more about a lunar return, or you would like to book a reading, you can find me at www.carolbellis.com. You can find me on Substack, and I look forward to coming back and talking about a new subject. Not sure what it is yet. Bye for now.